you. Thank you so much for coming. Just before we start our presentation, we're going to show you a quick ad for a new campaign that's coming up, and then we'll get going. Thank you so much.
I used to believe that if something was legal, it was good, and if it was illegal, it was bad.
But I've realised that's not the truth.
There are some truly evil things happening in this country that are perfectly legal.
And there are good people locked up for exposing them.
By now, the climate emergency is hardly even news. We know industries are ravaging the earth.
We know meat and dairy is ravaging the earth.
And we know that our government is directly responsible for it.
Widespread crop failures, mass starvation, droughts, displacement.
For some of the world, it's not so severe yet.
For others, it's life or death. It's now.
From temperatures soaring in India to the severe droughts in East Africa.
Tens of millions are at risk of starvation as land turns dry, dusty and barren.
We're talking about the collapse of civilization here, and the government is using the people's money to keep funding these destructive industries.
Something has to change. It has to change now.
Our demands are simple. 1. The government must support farming and fishing communities to move away from animal farming and fishing as part of an urgent and immediate transition to a plant-based food system.
2. The government must commit to rewild the freed up land and ocean as part of a broader programme of wildlife restoration and carbon drawdown.
So to tackle this, we're starting with dairy, one of the most cruel and destructive industries.
This September, we're going to cause large-scale material disruption to the supply of dairy, day after day, across the country.
We want to put the damage and exploitation of the dairy industry at centre stage.
It's time to demand a food system that puts justice first.
It's time to demand a food system that grows instead of destroys.
It's time to end dairy.
It's time for a plant-based future.
Hi everyone and welcome, and thank you so much for being here today and for giving us your time. I'm just going to start off by introducing myself. My name is Claudia. I'm 24 years old and I've been a volunteer with Animal Rebellion for a bit over 2 years now. I got involved because growing up I was always really passionate about animal justice. And then growing up, I began to see everything that was going on with the climate crisis, and I realized that I couldn't stand by and do nothing. And then along came this really incredible group that combined these two things, that saw the connection between the climate crisis and the animal crisis, and I knew that I had to be a part of it. So for those of you who don't know very much about Animal Rebellion, we are a mass movement that uses non-violent civil disobedience to bring about a transition to a just and sustainable plant-based food system as an attempt to halt mass extinction, alleviate the worst effects of climate breakdown, and ensure justice for animals. And I'm here today to talk to you because we have this incredible, really exciting campaign coming up this September, starting on the 3rd of September. We will be stopping the supply of dairy across the UK. This will mean empty... What this means is that we will see empty supermarket shelves. We will make frontline news, mass media attention to highlight the cruelty and destruction of this industry. And I'm here today to tell you why we need you to be a part of it.
Hi, my name is Orla. I'm also a volunteer with Animal Rebellion. I've been vegan for about 8 years, but I'm relatively new to Animal Rebellion. I joined less than a year ago. And before that, I was nursing. Specifically, I'm a pediatric nurse, and I'd like to say that I left my job in nursing to pursue activism full-time and to dedicate my life to liberating animals. Unfortunately, I'd like to say that, but unfortunately that's not the case. When I look back at my time in nursing, I think that when I think about what I was thinking about the world, I was in a bit of soft denial about the climate crisis. And that's not to say that I didn't think that the climate crisis was real. I absolutely did. But it's more to say that I thought it was a distant issue. And I thought it was something that I personally couldn't do anything to change. Perhaps recycling, but that was it. And I think that 9 months on, I have quite a different perspective. And so my hope from talking to you today is to share some of that perspective and hopefully empower you to take action with us. So we'll be talking today in 3 parts. We'll be talking about the animal crisis, we'll be talking about the climate crisis, and then we'll be talking about solutions, what we can do about it. And I want to say before we dive in that some of the things that we're going to be talking about might be difficult to hear. I imagine there's a broad spectrum of knowledge in this room. Some people know a lot about the climate crisis, others are maybe still in that soft denial. Either way, it's good to hear again, but it might be difficult. I know it's certainly difficult for Claudia and I to talk about this, and so you're free to leave at any time if you want to, but I would encourage you to stay, because I think the conversations that we're having today are incredibly important to have, so we can shed light on these destructive industries and come up with solutions together. So I want to start off by talking about the animal crisis. I think that it is one of humankind's greatest failings, is forgetting that we are not only intimately connected with nature, but that we are nature. And without nature, humans simply cannot survive. And we have created this separation through a process of othering. We humans are over here, and animals, they're something completely different to us. We humans are over here, and bugs, they're different. And this is the same othering that we see in all kinds of repression: racism, sexism, homophobia. And it is the focusing on the differences between us, instead of focusing on all of the things that we have in common. And I think when we do this, that we break down our ability to empathize. And when we move away from empathy, we open the gates to exploitation. And when I talk about exploitation in the UK, I'm talking about 10 million pigs who will never see the light of day. I'm talking about 900 million chickens whose 15-year lifespan is reduced to just weeks. And I'm talking about the exploitation of fish. Worldwide, 3 trillion fish are killed every year. That's 11,000 sharks every single hour. And we paint sharks as the bad guys. And we are looking at having fishless oceans as early as 2050.
I think it can be really difficult when we hear these figures, these statistics, to understand the magnitude of the suffering and destruction that is really going on. Like, how do you even begin to comprehend those numbers? But I think, for me, one of the best ways to try and begin to understand what this all means is by putting ourselves in the shoes of those beings who are being exploited. And when I think about this, of the exploitation and suffering that we cause other beings, I find it difficult to think of a better, or technically a worse example than when we think of the life of a dairy cow. And so I know that a lot of what I'm going to say is not going to be new information to you, but I ask you for a minute to really think and put yourself in this position. You are separated from your mother hours after your birth. The minute that it is biologically possible, you are forcibly impregnated. Throughout your life, you suffer from engorgement and infections caused by overproduction of milk because you have been bred to produce more milk than your body ever should, than should ever be possible. You carry your baby to term, and finally, when your baby is born, they are taken away from you. This bond between a mother and child is broken, and you scream and you cry, but no one comes to help you. And this process is repeated again and again until you are deemed unfit to continue and you are slaughtered. And this is the brutal reality of what is being experienced, of what is being lived by billions of cows in the dairy industry today.
And it's not just animals in the agricultural industry that are suffering. The UK used to be a forest. 50% of the land in the UK is now used for animal agriculture. Land that used to be wild, that used to be habitats for millions. And this is mirrored worldwide. We know that 50% of the ice-free land in the whole world is used to either graze or produce food for animals. And if there's something that I want you to remember as we move forward, because I think it is perhaps the most important point of this whole presentation, is that I think that a plant-based food system is not just something that will help us on the road to the climate crisis, to resolving the climate crisis. I think that a transition to a plant-based food system is the solution to the climate crisis. And I'm going to explain that for you. A recent study from Cambridge has said that if you take all of this farmland in the world, all this agricultural land, if you transition to a plant-based food system, you will simultaneously feed the same amount of people, if not more, as well as freeing up 76% of that land. 76%. Just to show you how much land that is the same amount of land as all of North America, all of Europe, all of China, and all of Australia combined. And if we can rewild this land, we can solve the climate crisis. Because it also says that the carbon drawdown of all these forests that we could create would give a carbon drawdown of approximately 34 gigatons. And that just happens to be approximately the same amount of carbon produced through the fossil fuel industry. Yes, we absolutely need to move away from fossil fuels, 100%, but this is a twin problem with a twin solution. If we transition to a plant-based food system, it will buy us massive time.
So I wonder how many of you have read the latest IPCC report that came out, or the latest IPCC summary report. For those of you that haven't, what it tells us is that it is code red for humanity. We have incredibly credible scientists like Sir David King, who was a former chief scientific advisor for the UK government, telling us that it is the end of humanity as we know it. We have the top scientists in Australia saying that the collapse of civilization is the most likely outcome. And it is not just climate scientists telling us this. We have Antonio Guterres, who is the UN Secretary General, whose whole job is to be diplomatic, not to be radical. And regarding this report, he says, the jury has reached a verdict, and it is damning. This report is a litany of broken promises. It is a file of shame. cataloguing the empty pledges that put us firmly on track towards an unlivable world. Let that sink in a minute. An unlivable world. But what does that mean? Unfortunately, we don't have to look very far. Although the worst impacts of the climate crisis will be felt within the next 20 years, around the world, it is already the reality that is being felt by many people. People who are the least responsible, who have done the least to contribute to this crisis, are the ones who are feeling this impact now. Already, in Madagascar, 1 million people face a humanitarian crisis, drought and famine. That's tens of thousands of people. And I want to take a minute to talk about what it means when we talk about these degrees of warming, because we hear it a lot, right? We hear, 1.5 degrees of warming, 2 degrees of warming, so on. And when we talk about this is the average warming across the whole of the Earth's surface. So when we talk about what that actually means in terms of inland heating, it could be 4 degrees, 5 degrees, 6 degrees, 7 degrees. And all over the world, we're feeling these impacts. I'm from Chile, and there we have had 13 years of drought, where we've seen, huge lakes, reservoirs that are now completely dried up, completely devoid of life. You have whole communities who used to rely on these lakes, who used to use that water for agriculture, who have had to move, who have been displaced because they cannot live there anymore. And I'd like to read you a quote regarding the heat waves that are happening in India and Pakistan. And it says, "New Delhi feels like it is on fire. The heat comes off the road in blistering waves, and the water that comes from the cold tap is too hot to touch. At night, temperatures do not fall below 30 degrees. There are daily power outages, and the coal stocks are running low. The northern wheat crop is scorched." And as I said, this is happening all over the world right now. I'm going to show you some photos from articles that have come out only this week. We have Spain. This is the longest river in Italy this week. Portugal, France, and here in the UK, where we have reached temperatures that we were not predicted to hit until 2050, happening now when we are at 1.2 degrees above pre-industrial level. All these things are happening now, so I want you to try and imagining what the world is going to look like when we hit 2 degrees, 4 degrees, 6 degrees, and so on.
I'm not sure how much of the science of climate breakdown you guys are aware about, but I'm going to explain it really briefly. There are very specific conditions required on Earth for humans to live. That's why life doesn't exist on so many other planets. And recently, those conditions have been broken down by scientists into planetary boundaries. And these planetary boundaries are interconnected. There are 9 of them. And if one is pushed too far, it has a knock-on effect on the others. Of these 9 planetary boundaries, 5 of them have been crossed and pushed into dangerous zones. Of these 5 crossed planetary boundaries, 4 of them are directly related to animal agriculture. I'm going to break them down really briefly. The first one is climate change. We know that the methane produced from cows and other agricultural animals contributes to the greenhouse gas buildup as much as all of the cars, all of the trucks, all of the lorries, all of the boats. The second one is species extinction. We know that the species on Earth are so linked that the death and the extinction of even one insect has a knock-on effect on millions of other species. The third one is land system change. For example, the destruction of the Amazon. And fourthly, altered biochemicals, phosphorus and nitrogen. And to break that down really briefly, because perhaps it's the most complex, we pump these minerals into the earth to get higher yields of crops. And we already know that 50% of the food that we produce on planet Earth goes directly to animals. If we transition to a plant-based food system, we can halve these numbers, or almost. I want to speak really quickly about tipping points, because this is also talked about a lot. When we talk about tipping points, it's a point of no return. This is, for example, the ice caps or the Amazon. And the Amazon is one I learned about recently. The Amazon creates its own climate, a climate of rains that feed the Amazon to allow the life to live within it. And studies have recently emerged to say that once we have deforested the Amazon by 20 to 25%, the entirety of the Amazon will die. Currently, right now, we have deforested 17% of the Amazon. And worse still, we are deforesting 1% every year. This is for animal grazing and production of food for animals. You do the math. We have 3 to 4 years to save the entirety of the Amazon. Otherwise, it is gone forever. And this is mirrored in another quote from Sir David King, the ex-chief scientific advisor. He said last year that we have 3 to 4 years, so it's now 2 to 3 years, to determine the future of humanity. And I want to talk about one more study, which ties in all the things that Claudia has been talking about. This study is called The Future of the Human Climate Niche. And I would really recommend you to look this up. I don't really read many or any scientific studies, but I read this one, and it broke my heart. This study says that in the next 20 to 50 years, we are looking at having between 1 and 3 billion climate refugees. That is because the places that they are now living will be uninhabitable. 3 billion. For context, that's the population of the entire world in the 60s. And we already know how the UK government treats refugees. To speak briefly about the UK government, they are subsidizing these destructive industries. They are taking payoffs from major polluters. And now they are criminalizing protest. I have a quote which I was a bit reluctant to put in the talk today because I don't really want to give this person a platform. But I think this quote highlights that the people in power know what's going on. They understand the situation, but they are not doing anything about it. This is a quote from Boris Johnson from this year's COP. We will see desertification, drought, crop failure, and mass movements of humanity on a scale not seen before. Not because of some unforeseen natural event or disaster, but because of us. Because of what we are doing now. And our grandchildren will know that we are the culprits. We are on COP27 for a reason. 2 degrees is dead.
We're telling you all of this not to depress you, not to make you angry, although those are perfectly human, valid emotions to have, responses to have to this situation. We're telling you this because everyone needs to know the truth, and because just knowing the truth is no longer enough. What we need is mass-scale social change. What we need is truth combined with action. And the good news is that alongside all the environmental science, there is an equally reputable body of social science, the science of human behavior and culture. And through this, we can look at history and find significant moments of social change. Moments where the will and power of ordinary people coming together to say enough is enough was so great that they forced those in power to listen, to act, and create the change that we so need. And this has happened throughout history over and over and over again by no accident.
This is the power of ordinary people. People who are in circumstances where the future that is presented to them is completely unacceptable. The future like we are being faced with today. Some of the examples of people in history that come to mind are the suffragettes, are the Indian independence movement and Gandhi, Otpor and the Serbian Revolution, and countless other countries who have come together to overthrow dictators. If we look at the civil rights movement alone, there are countless examples. The Montgomery bus boycotts, started by one person, Rosa Parks. The lunch counter sit-ins, started by 4 people. The Freedom Riders, just 13 people, who came together in a room and said, "I do not accept a future of segregation and racism, and I will do everything that it nonviolently takes to prevent that future for future generations." The time is now. Movements are rising up all across the country and all across the world. And I would ask you to look at yourself and to ask the personal question of what is my deepest value? What is at my core? Is it justice? Is it freedom? Is it safety? And what would you do to protect that value, to uphold that value? I am asking you not to be a bystander. We have the solution, a transition to a just and sustainable plant-based food system. And more importantly, we have the strategy. Nonviolent, direct action has been proven again and again to be the fastest way to create widespread social change. There are 4 key components. Dilemma, a refusal to cooperate within the toxic system that is upholding the injustice. Sacrifice, to stand up for those core things that you believe in. Respect, we act out of love and compassion, knowing that everyone is a victim of this toxic system, and only through love can we liberate others. And disruption, linked to dilemma. Once we cause disruption, we gain massive media attention, and we laser focus the public eye on the issue. A study from Erica Chenoweth studied over 300 events of uprising. It is the most comprehensive study of movements. And she found that non-violent civil disobedience, when compared to violent civil disobedience, is more effective by far.
And just as an example of showing where us taking non-violent direct action has shown effects. So the first big thing that Animal Rebellion did was the 2019 October Rebellion. And as you can see in this graph, the term of plant-based rapidly went up. This continued on until January, obviously, where we have Veganuary. And obviously, following the events, it falls back down. But as you can see, it never goes back down to where it was prior, showing that we managed to infiltrate the public narrative and have an effect. And if we could do this in 2019, imagine what we can do with this campaign. Which brings me back to talking to our campaign and how we're going to do this and what we're going to do. So this September 3rd, we will be taking non-violent direct action against the dairy industry. This will cause mass, wide-scale shortages. It will gain media attention, unlike anything we've done before, and it will allow us to highlight the cruelty and destruction caused by this industry. We have two demands. One, for the government to support farmers and fishing communities to move away from animal farming and fishing as part of an urgent and immediate transition to a plant-based food system. And two, the government to commit to rewild freed up land and ocean as part of a broader program of wildlife restoration and carbon drawdown. And you might be wondering, or maybe not, but why dairy? And I want to preface by saying that it's not just dairy that we're going for. We want a fully plant-based food system. But this is a start. And the dairy industry makes perfect sense. We've already spoken about how incredibly cruel it is, how incredibly exploitative it is, also exploitative to its workers. Already in the UK recently, it's come out that just this week, 1/4 of UK dairy farmers are planning to quit. And I want to make it clear that we are not against farmers. They are a pillar of our society, and like all of us, they are victims of this system as well. And what we're asking for is for adequate support from the government to stop subsidizing these damaging industries and instead give people the support that they need for more sustainable, ethical ways of farming. In France, actually, suicide rates of dairy farmers are 50% higher than those of the average population. So we need to support people, we need to help people, and we have to create a system that is so much better, so much more loving, and so much more beautiful than the system that we have now. And the dairy industry is a weak link. The only reason the dairy industry is alive here in the UK is because of government subsidies. Without these subsidies, it would not be profitable. It would not be possible to keep it alive. And this is getting harder and harder with new developments like precision fermentation. And already 1 out of 3 people in the UK choose a plant-based milk. This is something we can do. This is a tangible win. And if we win this, imagine what we can do. We can empower other people and continue this battle for a plant-based food system, for a system that cares for people, that cares for animals, and cares for the planet.
And now for the juicy part. How are we going to do it? We're going to be mobilizing 500 people to take action together. Imagine if every single person in Vegan Camp Out committed to ending the dairy industry. We could end animal agriculture tomorrow. We are taking action on the 3rd of September, and it will be a combination of tactics. The first will be high-level disruption at distribution sites. And the second will be a frontward, media-facing, supermarket style to get all the media focused on this issue. I want to speak really briefly about community, because we will be taking action together. We will be working in teams of 10 to 15 people living together during the time of action. And I just want to say that entering into activism is the best decision that I ever made, because of the people that you meet in this community. Like-minded people, and you will have friends for life. But it will require some level of personal sacrifice. But I think that that sacrifice is proportionate to the crisis that we are facing.
And you might be wondering, why are we so confident that we can do this? But the answer is because we've done lots of this before. Only a couple of weeks ago, we managed to liberate 5 beagle puppies from an MBR testing facility. Prior to that, many of us were also involved in the Just Stop Oil Coalition, which managed to gain mass media attention, caused petrol shortages, and caused general shortages all across the country. Last year, we managed to also shut down all 4 of McDonald's distribution centres across the UK. And a year ago today, we managed to shut down McDonald's only burger factory for 3 days. And that was with less than 100 people. Can you imagine what we can do with 500 people committed and dedicated, right? Dedicated to taking direct action against the dairy industry. We are so powerful. We need you to join us. We need you to help us make this happen.
To close, I just want to say that truth and morality are on our side. We spoke earlier about countless examples of people in history who have gone before us. And I don't want to compare our suffering to their suffering. But they do give me courage, and they do give me strength. Am I afraid for the campaign in September? Absolutely. But I'm also hopeful. Hopeful that we can move away from these destructive industries and that we can create a just future for all life. How do you get involved? The first way is we would ask you to sign our Action Network form. We have volunteers that will be coming up front, and they will have the Action Network form available to sign. The second thing you could do is get involved in your local hub. We have hubs all over the country. Again, our volunteers will have links to those hubs so you can get involved. You can help us mobilize. There is a place for everyone in Animal Rebellion. And thirdly, if you are unable to do those, we would ask that you would consider donating. A suggested donation would be an hour's wage a month. Thank you so much for listening to us. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, guys, for being here. A couple of really quick reminders. Tomorrow at 11 a.m. we have a talk here for our Plant-Based Unis campaign. Please be here. Also tomorrow at 5 p.m. we have a panel discussion for Q&As where you can come and ask us about anything you want. We also have a stall. We will be there for the rest of Vegan Camp Out. Come talk to us, come join us. And today I am asking for those of you who want to take action, or you think you want to take action but you just have a few things that you want to talk about, please come and join us over here at the front. We have a bunch of really keen volunteers with clipboards who would love to talk to you, and we would love to have you join us this September. Thank you all so much for coming.